it all does start from us, and being able to look into ourselves and say, okay, what is my role and responsibility in expressing who I am? Because nobody else can do it justice in the way that we can. And it is a level of bravery and finding your voice.
For episode 38, my guest is Adah Paris, life hacker, tech philosopher, storyteller, coach, speaker, consultant, artist. She is a multifaceted human being, as we all are, but she makes no apologies about it. Adah has developed a new framework called the 4 Freedoms, which she created to enable people and organisations to be more human in an increasingly digital and technological world. She wants you to recognise that your greatest asset is your ability to make choices, to understand your individual and collective value, and to adapt your behaviours to create sustainable and impactful change. Something that comes up from this conversation is our desire as a team to hear more from you, our amazing community, and make this whole project more human. Remember when we asked you to send us a voice clip with what the future is beautiful has meant to you and the impact of the unfolding of these conversations in your life? Well, don't be shy. Do send us something over. Record a voice note on your phone and email it to connect@thefutureisbeautiful.co. And not only would us as the team love to listen, we would love to make a kind of collage episode, which is all about your voices. And if you're a monthly patron, do join us on our monthly patron video call. It's so good to see each other's faces. I hope that you enjoy this conversation after this. Welcome to The Future is Beautiful, with me, your host, Amisha Gaddy. On this show, we explore the weave between politics, spirituality, creativity, and sustainability. It's time for us to move beyond silos and into an integrated way of being. Every one of us has ideas and personal experiences to share that can lead us to a brighter future. This is the revolution. Despite the challenges we face as a global community or the pressures that we meet in our daily lives, when we stop and dare to dream, to ask ourselves the big questions, and to share what we are already doing, we create the future that we wish to wake up for. That future is beautiful. I am delighted today to welcome Adah to my sofa. Hello, Adah.
Hi, Amisha.
Lovely to be with you.
It's great to spend some time with you.
Can you share what you shared before we pressed record about questions and stories?
Yeah. Whenever I do, well, it's not just whenever I do a talk. I think now everything I do, I would say that I'm a storyteller. And there's a quote that I generally use that says, the purpose of a storyteller is not to tell you what to think, but to give you things to think upon. And I think that's become almost a mantra for my life, because I'm, as long as I can get people to ask themselves the questions that sometimes they've been avoiding asking, then that's a great start, because it means that they're curious. And I think a lot can be done from a point of curiosity, and we've had it educated out of us and kind of browbeaten out of us in so many different ways that I think, for me, one of the things I'd say about myself is that I'm passionately curious about a lot of things, and if I can help other people do that, it's a great start.
I love that. I mean, that's basically why I'm doing this podcast, because I feel like there are so many things and that we can learn about, and so many amazing people that are exploring things in different ways. Having exposure to people that are outside of who we might normally come across in our day-to-day, that think differently, that do things differently, and that ask different questions.
Yeah, and that's why I said yes. We've known each other for a couple of years, and I've loved...
It's been like 6 now.
Okay, a couple more than a couple, 6 years. I love seeing your own journey and seeing how you flourished and gone on to different things, always wanting to support you in some way. And this is another way of me supporting, saying, I believe in what you're doing. And actually, it's come at a time when it really resonates with my own journey of bringing together all the weird and wonderful parts of me.
Well, that's one of the things that I've always loved about your work and the way that you talk about what you're doing and represent what you're doing and just are in the world, that you bring together different threads. You're not afraid to show parts of yourselves in certain areas where other people might think, no, that's a place where you act like this.
Yeah.
But actually you're very open about being into different things.
Yeah.
And I'm really interested in this weaving work. I've had people tell me all through my career.
Oh, people with opinions.
People I know that, you know, you're doing too many things, you're interested in too many things, focus, you know, it's confusing. And I've always felt like, but there's so much richness in where things overlap.
Yeah.
And bringing, you know, that part of myself into this other work and not compartmentalizing. So that's something that I've always just really admired about your work, that you're able to share with people, whether it's Reiki healing, whether it's coaching, whether it's the work in tech, whether it's the talks, whether it's
into quantum physics, into so many different things.
The headdresses that you make, whatever it is, they're all just as much part of who you are.
Yeah. When I was growing up, I loved my mother because she brought us up. I'm the oldest of three, and she brought us up that life is about experiences rather than gifts. And so she would take us to, you know, we'd go to the forest, and then we'd go brass rubbing, and we'd go to ballet. And so I developed this sense of richness in experiences as a child. But, you know, I think when I was 6, I wanted to be an astronaut because I fell in love with Mr. Spock. And I was like, that's what I'm going to be. I need to get up into space and go and find him. But then there was the part of me that really into maths and problem solving and physics. There was a bit about the art, but I always felt that I had to be one or the other. I couldn't be all of these things. And I just think that as I've got older, you know, I suppose teenage years, I was trying to fit in. I felt like I had to fit in and had to be accepted as in these different groups. But I never really was able to understand or navigate those social cues and those ideas. And it always felt uncomfortable. When did it really start? So I suppose there's been a couple of real pinnacle moments in my life where I think it all boils down to understanding identity. People will mention it. Burning Man was a big thing for me. And that's a long story about how I got there. But Burning Man has 10 principles. And for me, the ones that really stood out was radical self-expression. So the understanding that when people go to Burning Man, it's not costuming, which is what I thought it was. I'm going to go out and I'm going to buy the best costumes, but actually understanding that it's a way of expressing who you are, and there was no judgment and you were free to be who you are. There was civic responsibility. So for me, there's always been this thing about how can I help more people than myself? It's not just about me. Participation. So that comes from being young, the experiences my mother introduced us to. How do I throw myself into that? And that's why I got into the immersive events. There's that mixed along with, I mean, I remember I did a talk for a women's event once, and they said, I think it was about women joining the board. And it was asked, what motivates you? Who was your mentor? And I went, well, you know, really what really got me started in the identity work was bad relationships. Understanding that I lost my sense of identity in those relationships. And it was a long journey and a long process of healing. I remember waking up one day and saying, I don't even know how I like my eggs. I don't even know what is it? Who am I? Took a long time of real soul searching, becoming more self-aware. That's where the crux of what I do now really started, in the understanding of it's actually quite easy to lose your sense of identity when you're caught up in so many other things and trying to fit in and trying to fit society's idea of who you should be. So now I've got to the stage where I hate the idea of labels, because I think sometimes it makes other people feel comfortable. And then we end up trying to fit into these things and hide in parts of ourselves, which is also, you know, I talk about it with my coaching clients sometimes, that when we present the version of ourselves that we think other people want to see, we're actually making really big assumptions and we're taking away people's choices because we're almost saying, well, you're not ready to see this part of me. Whereas now, you know, at my wonderful age of 46.
Look fabulous.
Thank you, darling. Somebody said that to me today, and I feel I look younger now than I did. There's a photo of me when I was 21, and people think I look older. Yeah. But I think I've really settled into my skin. I now am unapologetically myself. Of course, you know, different environments, you know, I can moderate that. But actually a friend said that what I'm good at is empathetically subverting the way that people think.
And it also makes me wonder if having that sense of inner freedom does make us look and appear younger, because actually it's so much effort to hide everything, to keep everything compartmentalized, to try and live up to what you think you're meant to be doing, to hold back.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. For myself, okay, if I can speak from my own experiences. But yes, I definitely think that letting go and understanding. So when people used to say, oh, you need to let go, I used to think that what that meant is I need to clear my mind, a bit like with meditation. You know, when I first started meditating, I've been doing it for years. The idea of letting go in my brain and the way that I think, I thought it meant I had to clear my mind. Mm-hmm. So I would try and clear my mind and then other things would pop in. Realising that letting go is just remembering to breathe. Taking that moment, and it's a really powerful thing to be able to just stop and not have a plan. Sit in that vulnerability and that boredom. I collect quotes. So another great one that I use is apparently by Debussy, if you believe everything on the internet. But it's music is the silence between the notes. And for me, we all understand that on a musical perspective, that without those silences, it's just noise. So why are we as humans so afraid to go into those silences? Because that's where the beauty is. And that's where my sense of identity comes from. And the way, my ability to live that out is that I'm not afraid to go into those shadows and really get to grips with them and tackle myself. And why do I feel jealous, or why am I reacting to somebody in this way? Is it that there's something in them that I recognize in myself that I'm actually trying to hide? Really wrestling with that sometimes and being in that stillness and that darkness is where the beauty comes out, and being able to say, okay, you know, nobody's perfect and I know my faults and I'm owning them. And then being able to step forward through life and mix with other people and say, okay, you know, I am a bit of a chatterbox, I am these things, but that's also part of my beauty.
Yeah, sometimes I think we kind of present ourselves as perfect beings, and we expect other people to also then be perfect in relationships. Something very powerful when we just go, I'm a flawed human, and so are you, and so are you, and so are you, and so are you. Wonderful.
Yeah. So I've just written the first draft of a short book on intimacy. And that was a really interesting journey because it actually came from one particular relationship, but of course they all feed into each other. And I'd been in this relationship with this guy and absolutely loved him. We broke up. I realised that what I missed was the intimacy, not the sex. It was just these moments of being connected. But what I'd also realised was that intimacy starts with us. And so for me, it's into me see. What I did was I'd written this list of all the times we were intimate and created a list of how was I in that moment. And I was present, I felt safe, I felt secure, I felt childlike. And then setting myself a goal of trying to do something that was just for me, that nobody else would benefit from, that ticked off one of those things. So how can I be present for myself? What can I do that makes me feel present for myself or feel secure or childlike? It was really powerful, a really powerful realization that sometimes we put that on somebody else. you're going to make me happy, or you're going to do this, or if I have this car, then if I have this job or this house, those are the things that are going to make me happy. The big realization that actually that's not it. It comes from within, and what I think we're doing when we do that is we're externalizing happiness, negating our own understanding of us. That's where all of who I am now comes from.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're now doing this amazing piece of work on the 4 freedoms, which is bringing together everything that you've experienced to date. Can you share what that is and how it came about?
Yes. So, mutual friend of ours, Valeria, I think about 3 years ago, approached me. She's a publisher, a literary agent actually, and she asked me to write a book on feminism. And I had this moment of, oh my God, I've never actually said I'm a feminist, and what do I think? And I'm a bad feminist because I haven't read all the texts that you're supposed to read. And again, this is me going to what's the external view of what a feminist is. And so I had this mini freak out, and I actually put a post on Facebook and asking people to recommend all the texts I should read, and suddenly realised that that would just be a regurgitation of everybody else's work. And that's not what she was asking. What she was asking was about the way that I live my life. So 3 years ago, you had Trump and all this other stuff happening, and all these different rallying calls and movements for women and with women and by women. I had a real question about how do these movements and these voices that are out there that are supposedly representing me, really representing me as a woman of colour. So the whole intersectionality and all of that. What I did was, I love a mind map. I absolutely love a mind map. And when I create work, whether it's artistic or what have you, I mind map everything, and it's a brain dump of everything that I see. And that's how I started. Started by looking at the patterns in my own life. So relationships and work and patterns I saw with clients, and started to move them around. And it took 3 years. It took 3 years of shaping and bringing things together. And the patterns that I saw, there were 4 clear patterns. The 4 freedoms, as they are now known. The first was personal expression. So how am I bringing my full self to whatever I'm doing? How am I being unapologetically myself? How do I change the narrative of the stories that I was perpetuating, and then getting fed up when other people respond to those stories, but taking responsibility for changing that. The second was cultural, so cultural freedom, and that was, what are the systems and the structures and my role? How do I fit within those? So it's not so much fitting in, because I'm now understanding how to be unapologetically myself, but also my behaviour or the behaviour of others at organisations, and where do I fit into that, and how do I vocalise, start to change my narrative, how do I vocalise who I am within that. The third is economic, so less about the amount of money that I want to make, but the way that I choose to make money and how that nurtures passion and impact. And for me, impact is, what's the bigger impact I can have in the world? So on other people's lives. So local, community, global, all of that thing. And the fourth is social freedom. And what I realised is that if you work on the first 3, so personal expression, culture, economics, the fourth changes. Because social freedom meant that moving from operating in silos sitting within these labels or structures, and actually moving to a place where I was connecting with different ecosystems, but from a place of understanding my value and the value of others. So having a real level of empathy, being able to ask for what I need, but also understanding how I can help other people. Those are the 4 freedoms, and I now use them as a framework for helping individuals and organisations, and hopefully systems, because it's not just, again, going to that impact bit. I want to have bigger impact, and it's not just by changing companies. The 4 freedoms is now a framework for helping people or systems, businesses, to audit themselves of, this is where we are, and being really honest, this is where we are, and this is where I want to be. And now how do I get there? And that's the transformation piece.
And so this can be applied to an individual or to an entire organisation.
Yeah. Working on there's 3 phases to it, or 3 models to it at the moment. The first is a book that I would love to write. And I started to map that out, and I would do it as a piece of psychogeographic work. So choose a couple of cities and go and immerse myself in those cities and understand what it means to be human based on those 4 freedoms. Building a series of programs. In one of my past lives, careers, I was a learning designer. Being able to build programs where individuals or organisations can look at including things such as ethics and critical thinking and philosophy and new economic models and leadership and sustainability, but bringing all of those in. So a series of programs and talks and workshops. And then the last bit is a series of some retreats where individuals can come and really explore their own identity and relationship with the 4 freedoms. And by the end of that, come up with a blueprint or a plan for how to make that transformation.
Beautiful. Can you talk in a little bit more detail? Can we go through the freedoms and kind of unpack them a little bit? So starting with the personal, I think what's really interesting is the level of responsibility that's part of it.
Before I got to this point of the 4 freedoms, I actually ended up, I think most of my career has been based on other people recognising things in me and saying, oh, you'll be really good at this, and me taking that opportunity. So one of those was I had worked in education, I had worked in advertising, I had worked in tech, built, great reputation, built these great networks, went off to Burning Man. And as you said, always bringing these different, so I didn't hide the fact that I went to Burning Man, and because I was running my own business, I used to say to all my clients, August is my time and I will go away to Burning Man. But so I got into this place of being asked to do talks and workshops on personal brand identity. And I'd never thought of myself as a brand. But recognising that what I had done was, again, looking at patterns and the models that I was using in work, I had been applying them to myself. It all does start from us. And being able to look into ourselves and say, okay, what is my role and responsibility in expressing who I am in the way nobody else can do it justice in the way that we can. And it is a level of bravery, finding your voice, which is pretty tough. I remember working for an organisation where I was quite timid, quite shy. And there was this amazing Italian lawyer, Marina, in fact. And I will always remember her because she became one of the first people to really say, use your voice. I've got your back. Use your voice. You've got a lot to say. I will have your back. And it was just that, okay, and slight validation, but recognizing that nobody else can do justice for me as much as I can. And also the idea that when you get on an aeroplane and they say to you, the oxygen masks are going to fall from the roof, what do they say? You have to put your own on first before you can help anybody else. And that was a big kind of realization of, before I can be there for anybody else, family, friends, partners, work, I have to make sure that I'm okay and I know who I am. But I don't think we ever get to a point of completely understanding that. I think that we will change, and I know that I've changed over years, and I will constantly change. I'm constantly in beta. That's a good thing. It does start with us taking responsibility. People will always have opinions, and we can't stop people from saying or doing what they want. But if we can take back some of the power that we give to other people, whether consciously or subconsciously, about how they represent us, then it's actually, that's when you start to realise how much power you do have. I suppose I've got to the stage where I question sometimes why people are saying something to me and why now. if I feel like it's coming from a place of love, I do take on board some people. So people who are really close to me, I take on board what they say. And it's a reflection on that maybe I may not be aware, because also the risk is, by being unapologetically myself, there's also the risk of, there's a fine line between that and being narcissistic and only listening to myself. And I'm not that way either, because I am true to myself. But I'm very mindful of upsetting other people, being empathetic and understanding somebody else's truth may not be mine, but having an appreciation or an understanding of that. So some of the best conversations I've had have been with people that I disagree with, because it gets me to think differently, or at least see a different perspective that I probably wouldn't have got to on my own. Yes, I think that I'll speak for myself. I think that I will always have that other people talking to me and giving their opinions. But it depends on where I am in my journey, how comfortable I am in myself at that precise moment. A key thing I learned a couple of years ago was never to let somebody give me the gift of insecurity. It's a gift I don't have to accept. And so that's why I question, where has it come from and why now? What's in it? What's in it for them? What's in it for me? Because sometimes things can be quite strategic, but other times it can be, I'm feeling this way because. It's also made me, I think being more aware of myself has also made me very mindful and careful of the language that I use. If a friend does something and I'm upset by it, then I will say, when you did this, I felt like this, and not use blame.
Yeah.
Allow them to sit with that. But that also means that enabling them to make choices. And if they choose to do it again, then I have choices. I can either understand and accept that that's who they are, that's their very nature, and then I feel like I don't have a right to go back at them again if they do it repeatedly, because that's who they are. Or I can change the nature of my relationship with them. And it doesn't mean I don't talk to them, it's just I'm aware that what you do or say or what have you may trigger me in some way. And so I take responsibility for that interaction.
So a big part of it is having very clear discernment, so that you can really discern where something's coming from, and you can allow people that you trust to show you your blind spots.
Yeah, I've had random strangers give me an opinion of me. How much do I take on? Well, I don't know. A lot of it really does depend on where I am in that moment. And a big thing has been making sure I have thinking space. I really underestimated how much that can make a difference in everything that I do. I have been known to be a workaholic. So actually, I would say I have sacrificed some friendships and social life and all of those other things, because I've got to get the next thing done and I've got to do this, and if I don't do it, and not, working over the weekends. But just...
They're so quiet the weekends.
Well...
If you want to get work done.
Yes, but also working for yourself. The Monday to Friday thing doesn't really count. And I wake up 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, so I'm definitely a morning person, and I can get a lot more done in the morning. But yeah, just being able to just stop and think, or actually just not think, just stop and be. That ability to stop can actually move us forward a lot faster sometimes than we believe. Or that idea of, I don't have time. Time and distance are man-made concepts, and the way that we even talk about it, I don't have time, I'm always busy. So I've stopped saying that. It's interesting, I now say it's not a priority. And the responses from some people have been quite interesting. Some people take offence to me saying that what you're doing is not a priority for me, which is quite interesting in itself. But being open and honest.
I can see why, just because it We've seen there's a I don't know if you've seen because you've not been on Facebook too much this week, but there's a thing that's going around where that a lot of our friends have been sharing. It's like the quote where it's like, "Do what you love, and you'll never work a day's life in you'll never work a day in the rest of your life." And then someone scribbled it out, and they've written something like, "Do what you love, and you'll never stop working." And
I've seen something
else,
yeah.
and you'll take everything personally.
Yeah, well, I think we have real emotional, when it becomes almost like our purpose or our soul's work, we do have that emotional connection to it.
Yeah.
We want to do our best and we want to make it right in whatever that means to us.
Yeah.
And so we throw ourselves into it and we think, oh, but if I just tweak it just this little bit, and if I, a bit like the internet, it's a bottomless pit. When do we stop? Sometimes we just have to say, okay, this is where I'm going to stop. Actually, it reminds me of talking with a couple of coaching clients. This idea that I want to make my parents proud. I said, well, have your parents ever said to you, when you do this particular thing, I will be proud of you? And most, I think almost all have said no. They haven't said that. So I said, so does that mean then that you're chasing this never achievable ending goal because it's in somebody else's head? Wouldn't it be better, and wouldn't they be proud and happy when you make yourself proud? Do everything with pride. And if you feel a sense of pride in whatever you do, and again, going back to that personal expression bit, and you live that, other people will see that. And I think that's what's happened with me. Some people who still don't know actually what I do for work, they just, it's beautiful to hear people saying, oh, I've seen your journey and you've flourished and you're looking younger, or whatever it is. They just know that I'm really happy. Move from being content to actually really happy and excited by possibilities and curiosity and all those things. And all of that whole mix is part of the personal expression.
And so it does involve discipline and practices, tools.
Yeah. And rituals, I'm a big believer in rituals. I think everything can be a ritual, but it's creating those processes, those rituals for yourself. Whatever it doesn't have to fit anybody else. But if it works for you, then go with it. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've tried different journals. There's, I think, the bullet journal, and there were the morning pages and the miracle morning and all these different things. I think part of my problem with that is that I just get bored I'm not a routine person. So even exercise, I find I have to have a goal. And so trying to, I'm going to get the bullet journal and I'm going to start doing these things, and I have to just suddenly go, oh, that's too much. So I've worked out my own routines. They're quite flexible within that, but in the morning I'll get up and I'll read. I might just lie still and listen to, the windows open and listen to the sounds, people going to work and the birds, the seagulls, all sorts of stuff, clocks ticking, and just that. And then meditate, and I might read, and I might get up and do a bit of yoga. By the time I actually get out of bed and sort everything out, it's probably 7 o'clock. I feel like I've had a full day. But it's a ritual that's mine, that works for me. It makes me happy.
Beautiful. So cultural freedom, can you expand on that a bit more?
Yeah, so cultural freedom is, I suppose the question is, what is culture? You have art is culture, music is culture, an organisation can have a culture, and then society has culture. What does that mean? So for me, it is almost the rules of engagement, the systems and structures that have been put in place that we will sometimes, or the tools that are used to express a collective thought process or a collective belief. It's, where do I fit into that? So how does that reflect who I am or what I'm trying to say about myself? just as I said, art can be culture. I see life as art. We are all trying to create our finest masterpieces, which is our life. And we've got, different palettes and paintbrushes and, all these different things. But to me, that is culture. And it's the behaviours. How do I behave? What are the things that I may be doing that may help or hinder my expression of who I am? So that's where the other people's opinions and views comes into it as well, because, I can't just look out of the window and say that's the world. That's my current view of the world. But there is a lot of other things that's happening out there that I need to coexist in and I need to navigate my way through. Cultural freedom is, how am I going to represent myself out there? How am I going to not fit in, how am I going to thrive, not even exist, how am I going to thrive outside of the window in this bigger society when it's got all these rules and regulations and opinions and all sorts of stuff? Is the story of me, how's the story of me internally matching the projection of that story externally? And how do I close that gap? And for organisations, it's a very similar thing. They may have their mission statement or whatever it is that's projected on the outside, but how does that really match what's going on in the inside with the people who are keeping that engine running? How do you bridge that gap? And so it could be language, it could be behaviour, it could be structure and processes, it could be, all these sorts of things, including as an organisation, how do you reward people? How do you acknowledge that these are humans that you have within your ecosystem network?
Yeah, it's interesting that we don't use the word humans very much for thinking about groups of people in culture.
Yeah.
Like we use it as a species, and then when humans become people, something gets lost.
Yeah, I think on my website I say that I believe in the power of human potential. It is about, so when I go into organisations, I say you have to remember that you're made of humans first, and your staff, your employees, your humans, they are your first customers. Not the people that you're trying to sell things to or change their behaviour or anything like that. You're made up of individuals who are trying to live their lives and trying to express who they are with these different identities, going back to what we were talking about. They have these, and the reason that they work at a particular organisation may be because it might match something in them. It might match something in their story. And if you, as a organisation, are able to recognise that and value that and help enhance that, you're helping to enhance the story of those humans before you start looking outside. Again, going to the idea of labels. Well, the label I'm happy to take is I'm a human.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, that's who I am. And I get it. I do get it. It's ways of categorization of people having a collective understanding of what something means. However, as we see, language gets tainted and transformed, and the idea, so going back to the idea of being a feminist, it can be transformed by an external viewpoint of, oh, this is what it means to be a feminist, and if you don't do this, then you're a bad feminist. And what's her name? Roxane Gay was the person who came up with it, who said, I'm a bad feminist. Before Madonna, now people are celebrating, going, well, I am a bad feminist because I'm not fitting into the media's portrayal or projection of what a good feminist should be. I'm me, I'm human. So, yeah.
One of my favourite podcasts, actually, The Guilty Feminist.
Yes.
It's hilarious.
Yeah. Yeah, brilliant. Like The Guilty Feminist, and that it's powerful because it's people taking, again, that idea of responsibility and saying, well, this is what it means to me. And I'm going to share that. I've got my voice and I have a platform, podcast, to amplify that. And going back to what we spoke about at the beginning, it's helping people to ask themselves questions and getting them to think differently. Or at least giving people choices of, this is what it means to me. You may say that, one person may say that, or somebody else may say this, but actually, what does it mean to me? And that is how I'm going to live it. So culture is a structure humans are part of. It's more, I'm taking the more bottom-up approach to it, of what does that mean on a collective human level? And how do we then express that upwards? So creating a piece of art. Is it art because somebody else says so? Is it art because I feel that it's art? And I'm trying to tell a story. It's an idea that I have inside my head that I want to share. Who's the judge?
And the online group that you have, I Am Remarkable, that's a really lovely example of cultural freedom.
Yeah. So I Am Remarkable is a initiative that was set up by Google, and it is a program that was set up to help women and underrepresented groups express why they are remarkable. So to share their stories and their successes, especially in the workplace. A long story short, but a friend nominated me for that, and I ended up becoming one of the faces of the global campaign. And as part of that kind of process, we had to do a short version. We had to participate in a short version of the course. And I just felt it was so powerful that I wanted to be able to really, again, that helping others, I wanted to be able to bring that to other people. So I did the training and I've now become a facilitator. And it happened at a time when I was just about to go traveling. I also thought that the way that I use Facebook and social media is storytelling. And so I created a closed group of, I think there's now nearly 700 women on there. And there's probably only about 5 or 6 people that I don't know in that group. And I just thought that it's a powerful, and I checked in with the organisers of the programme and said, look, I've created the space because there's a LinkedIn group and there's different things, but this is a platform that enables the members of the group, who are mostly women, I think, to be able to share. What I do is, and it's, the group, the Facebook group is actually owned by the group in that sense, but I've also been very careful that it's not a place to promote or sell other initiatives. This is a safe space, and I feel like I take great pride and responsibility in creating a safe space for people to share and hold in that space. What I do is, if I find articles that I feel will be, could be of benefit or interest to the people within that group, I share that. And what we have is generally, and it came from the main campaign, I'm Remarkable Fridays, where people will share their stories of this week, in this particular week, I am remarkable because. It's interesting that I started going, oh God, what can I say that I've done that's remarkable? Especially as women, we tend to just do things. Oh, well, I've done this thing, and But one of the things that came from the training is that it's not bragging if it's based on fact. I've created a safe space where people feel that they can actually share. And one of my friends today, she shared something, and other people got involved and, liked it and commented and shared their own stories. And she said, what I love about this group that I've created is that this sense of sisterhood, the sense of other women empowering and supporting other women's stories or their successes in a way that maybe they're not getting within their day-to-day environment. So that's how it started.
Yeah, I love it. It's really powerful. I enjoy getting all the posts and getting to celebrate in all of these beautiful moments. And also some of the women in there I know, and hearing something different to what I would hear from them if I said, hey, how are you doing?
Yeah.
We don't normally start with our I'm remarkable stories. Yeah. And actually, when I posted in it, I was quite nervous, and I've only posted once. I've been in there for ages, and then you realise, oh, this is a cultural shift in being allowed to share in that way, allowing yourself to share.
Well, I was going to say, it's not being allowed to share.
No, but when I say being allowed, I mean like...
you allowing yourself. Yeah. I think that in itself, as you said, is a massive cultural shift, because it's us taking responsibility for changing our own ideas of culture and our own behaviours. You know, there's a lot of women in that group who said, oh, I'm too nervous and I don't have anything to share. And sometimes I'll just give a little nudge, a little message and say, oh, but I know you did this week and that was amazing. And they go, okay, I need to go away and think about it, and they'll write something and then they'll post. There's just this swell of other people celebrating and saying, oh, that is amazing, because, oh yes, that's really helped. And what's beautiful as well is that some of that has now been taken offline, because I'm also very mindful of everything just being in the digital space.
Yeah.
So I will be running some face-to-face workshops, because there is a beauty and a power that doesn't translate online. So creating that physical space, and the workshops are quite different than what I've created online. But having people who, over a period of time, have gone, okay, I'm going to share now. Yes, I'm ready, because it's not just people sharing, oh, you know, I've got a master's or I've got this. It could just be, I'm a single mother with 2 kids and I work 2 jobs. I got it through the week without tearing my hair out. I'm remarkable. Yes, you are.
Yeah.
Yes, you are. And celebrate that.
Yeah, totally. And I love that we've talked a lot about online.
Yeah.
But you do so many wonderful things that are offline. The art of conversation is a beautiful cultural piece, again.
Yeah. Actually, it's interesting. I never thought of it that way, but you're right. So the art of conversation is currently an invite-only gathering that I run every couple of months. How that started was, I have worked, as I said, in various industries, sectors, and I've got friends from all different types of backgrounds, from cabaret, sex positive community, architects, behavioural geneticists. I have these beautiful tribe or ecosystem of these wonderful people. But also, a lot of the conversations were just online. WhatsApp, I belong to some beautiful WhatsApp groups, but the amount of messages that come through, my brain cannot cope with all of that. And you get added to WhatsApp group and then Facebook Messenger groups and Slack channels, and it was just noise and distraction. And I said, I want to have in real life conversations. It started with my birthday 2 years, last year. I belong to this beautiful members club called Victories, and got booked at the place, and I just said, right, come down, and it's just going to be in real life conversation. And so now it's developed. So everybody had such a good time that there are rules, and the rules are no mobile phones, no networking. So none of this, oh, who are you and what do you do? Crap, no. There are, no more than 100 people. It goes on for about 5 or 6 hours. And I generally start with a 5-minute chat about why I'm doing it. And then there'll be a special guest that we've had as a psychologist talk about why in real life conversation is really important for mental health. We've had a poet called Sophie Cameron who read some of her poetry about real life conversations. And actually she was talking about conversations on Tinder, which was hilarious. We've had a guy who taught people to sing. He teaches the over 50s to sing. And that was about using your voice and singing and just bringing it out. I've been doing that now for the last nearly a year. And when I went to New York, I decided that I wanted to do one there and just use that same community and said, who would you introduce me to in New York? Everybody who, the network in London, the ecosystem in London, then introduced me to their contacts in New York. And so I did a few mini ones in New York there was a small one in a bar, and then went to an exhibition. And so it's become this beautiful movement collection of people having real conversation about who they are, not what they do. And then they have now kind of gone off and done different things together, which is great.
Brilliant. Okay, economic freedom.
Economic freedom is, I suppose how I got to that was the realisation that I'm probably not a good person to work for other people in organisations, because I can be a bit like a magpie. Like, oh, what's that? What's that? What's that? And anything repetitive can be a strain for me. And so this decision that I'm going to try and set up my own thing, because then it gives me more choice. And actually I can choice in who I work with and what I do and the impact that I can have. And so economic freedom kind of stemmed from there, of understanding that the impact that I want to have in the world, or the impact that I want to have on people's lives. So whether it's working with young people or doing a piece of work for the EU Council about youth trends across Europe, whatever that is, or working with startups, I get to choose how I engage. And the economic freedom bit of that is that, well, I'm never going to earn the big salary that I could do in working for a corporate, but I am nurturing my passions and the impact by making that financial sacrifice. Is it about the money? We all have bills to pay and we have, responsibilities. But it's also, for me, is helping other people to have economic freedom, to helping them understand and work out a way to get to that point. So some of my coaching clients who are senior leadership, they're brilliant at what they do. They've been doing it for years. They're very good at it. There seems to be this shift in people, especially now, there seems to be this shift in people saying, it's not feeding my soul, or I'm a bit bored, or it's not quite what I want to do. I want to have impact, helping people to navigate that and understand how they can turn that passion into something else, into a way of generating income, is a beautiful thing. So I suppose sometimes when I meet people, and you do get around to that, oh, what do you do work-wise? My follow-up question is generally, do you enjoy it? Do you like what you do? Do you love what you do? And then that then stems another type of conversation. Because if they say no, so I said, well, what if money was no object? What would you be doing? And it's really interesting to hear the difference. So I met a lawyer who would be baking artisanal bread because that is his passion.
Wow, it's a very different way of spending his time.
Yeah. And I said, well, that then becomes a beautiful conversation, which is what happens at the art of conversation.
Does this whole thing about economic freedom and impact also include being aware of where your money's coming from and how clean, I say with inverted commas, because who knows if there is any clean money, but how clean that money is, and then also being more aware of what you do with your money and how that can have an impact in society?
On a personal level, yes.
Yeah.
I sit on the boards of a couple of companies. So once I'd kind of defined what the four freedoms were, I decided that I wanted to sit on the board of at least one company that represents each of the four freedoms, because that's also a way of me getting out there, but also bringing some of that in. And it was also really important for me to sit down with the founders or the kind of senior people and understand their story. What's their why? Where does the money come from? What's the process? Why are they doing it? And where do they see it going? And that, to me, is part of my economic freedom. It's understanding the past, the present, and the future. I know that I'm more mindful of where I buy my products, where I spend my money. I think I could be better, and that is a process. But yeah, even down to where I buy my food, which retailers I will or won't use. Yes, sometimes it is convenience, and I feel a bit guilty about that. But actually, some of the work that you've been doing in sustainability and understanding where all those products come from, there's more access out there for us to make informed choices. And I think that that is only a powerful thing, because that in itself gives us more economic freedom. Because it's not just about where the money comes from, it's how does it go back into the system. Being a bit of a tech head, the idea of blockchain is a fascinating one. So I remember when I first started looking into it, there was this moment of, oh my God, I feel like I'm looking at Google before we understood the potential impact that it would have on our lives. And I have this idea of creating human blockchains. And what I mean by that is that creating ecosystems or organizations where there's trust and transparency and a decentralization of ideas, so no one person holds that. But then the other side of blockchain, which a lot of people don't talk about, is the amount of energy that it is consuming to actually generate the bitcoins. And that to me is a problem as well. Yeah. And so there's this kind of, I've seen how blockchain, not just about financial systems, there's Alice.si, which use a blockchain platform to help transparency in charitable donations. You have Aid Tech, who use blockchain to help give refugees a digital identity that transcends borders, which means that those individuals are then able to have economic freedom because they have choice about how they access and how they spend money. And so there's this whole, and again, it's like you said, bringing these ideas of the impact of technology into understanding it's not just about blockchain and is that actually taking money out of the system. The structure, the idea of it can be used to enhance human potential and the idea or the concept or the reality of economic freedom for others. I start to get excited about the possibilities and understanding, looking at this idea and going, okay, so how can that be applied to help other people achieve economic freedom? If I can see that pattern, just talk about it.
Mm-hmm. Hello, this is Amisha. We are just taking a little break from the conversation here. On behalf of myself and the team, I want to say thank you for being part of creating a beautiful future. We make this for you so that we will all have the vision, wisdom, and activism we need at this time to weave a new narrative. Can you help us with this? You can do that by making a monthly donation to the podcast to cover our costs. Just the equivalent of a fair trade banana you might eat or a chai latte you might drink whilst you listen to this will make a huge difference to us. Head to www.thefutureisbeautiful.co/community to become a monthly patron. And the other thing is to tell your friends about this podcast so they can tune in too. Send them a message or post on social media and let them know what you love about it. And whilst you're at it, leave us a review. And now, back to the conversation. Thank you for your loving beauty. And the fourth freedom.
The fourth freedom, social freedom. That came from when I had worked my way through, realising I'd worked my way through the other three freedoms, recognising that serendipity happens all the time. It's just that we're so busy and so distracted that we don't notice it. But the more I had kind of travelled on this journey and expressing who I really am and using my voice and looking at my behaviour and all of this stuff and making conscious decisions about where my money comes from and where it goes and amplifying that, it was these moments of I don't have to go out and look to find these different groups of people. They would find me as well. Mm-hmm. People within my existing ecosystem, my friends and contacts and associates, started to refer me for different projects that they just knew would be at my core. So most of my work actually comes through Facebook, which is amazing. But friends and people that I know who have these contacts working on a different project will say, someone's working on this project that I think that you would absolutely love. And so they make that introduction. And that's how I started to realise that by being very open and honest about what I'm interested in and who I am, people are able to better represent me or recognize what I'm into, or what drives me, or where I can have an impact, or all those things. But also, being approached by organizations who said, we want to have more diversity in our organization. We want to have a more diverse workforce. Well, my personal viewpoint is that is starting at the wrong end. Going, okay, we want to have more this, because you end up with tick boxes. But actually going back to the first freedom, saying, okay, so how are you creating a space where people can be unapologetically themselves, or bring their full selves to what they're doing? And then what's the organizational culture? How can you shift that? And the economic freedom. So how do you reward people? Is it just pay rises and all these things? And creating this and getting the organization to live differently. Not just think or say differently, but actually live in a different way. That's when the ecosystem, the social freedom changes, because people then have a sense of autonomy, and they feel that the story of the bigger picture, the external, matches their own. And you just start to see that it becomes an organisation in flow. And then on an individual level, that's what also starts to happen, because you start to get to this place of, actually, I'm really enjoying this. What are the things that make me who I am? And how can I continue to do them? And how can I share those with others? And I think that's why I love going to random events. And, I might go to a talk on quantum physics, and then go to one on blockchain, and then go to psychedelic art and all these different things, because they're all parts of me. There's a value in meeting people in those different spaces, because bringing those people to the art of conversation just means that you're getting to have conversations with people that you probably wouldn't have connected with or spoken to. And it's a bit like your purpose for this podcast. You may not have had these ideas or spoken to people who have very different backgrounds or different ideas or viewpoints. It's that bringing that together so that you can ask yourself more questions. It really did start from understanding that serendipity is there all the time. I just was so focused on, I need to achieve this. I have to achieve these goals or these tasks or this externalization of my happiness. Understand the finding the others. The idea of finding the others. It's a two-way process. I don't have to just go out and try and seek. Yes, I have a better understanding of what I'm into, or being passionately curious, as I said, about new things. I remember there was a few years ago where, again, me kind of doing lots of stuff, but a few years ago, I had this moment of, well, the worst thing that can happen to me is I become bored of myself. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to try new things. I'm not sure what they're going to be, but I'll tell a few friends and I will try something different. And so I told a few friends, and within, I think, the space of a week, one of my friends in New York posted a Groupon voucher thing on my Facebook wall, and it was for fire eating. And I was out with some friends that night when she posted it, and I went, oh yeah, I'll do this. I bought the voucher, and the next morning I'm going, oh my God, what have I let myself in for? I mean, I've always had this kind of fascination, almost hypnotized by fire. But it was this, oh my God, what am I going to do? I just went, you know what? I'm going to give it a go, because it'll be interesting to put myself in that space, but also to meet other people who will be there. And of course, I went with this preconceived idea of who those people are going to be. But it was great. There was a couple of lawyers, and there was this elderly Indian woman, and there were all sorts of people just there with these fire swords. And it's this idea of finding the others. Is you can go and you can meet people in the most random places, but we have to step out of our comfort zone, because the security blanket is fine, but you stay within that, and that's all you know. And so again, with that cultural piece of stepping outside the door, or stepping outside and meeting other people, you'd be quite surprised about what can happen. How comfortable you can be once you get over the initial fear of, oh my God, I've got to go and talk to other people and I've got to go and do this other stuff. The value and the depth of conversations and ideas and potential collaborations that can come from that is a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I feel that. Somebody asked me actually recently if I was in my comfort zone or if I did things outside of my comfort zone. I thought, I don't think I've ever been in my comfort zone, but I've definitely got comfortable being outside of it. Because it just keeps the world big and exciting and surprising, and means that I don't get stuck in ruts of thinking or being for too long, and I'm constantly able to open things up, find a new perspective, look at something differently, and then ultimately myself differently.
Yeah, and I don't think that I'm not supposed to understand everything or empathise with everybody, but having a different perspective, being able to sit in that uncomfortability of having a conversation with somebody sometimes is a lesson in ego and a lesson in, as somebody who is a chatterbox, being able to hold space and actively listen are tools that I have then been able to take into other places and other spaces. As a people watcher, I'm actively engaging with other people and understanding that at the same time everybody is trying to tell their own story in very different ways. And so there may be a conversation that I've had with somebody over here that may be of value or of insight, or at least it means that I can connect people. I think that's what, the I Am Remarkable and the Art of Conversation are big examples of me doing that. But I do that all the time. I am protective of the introductions that I make, but I think that's because they're not just contacts, they're also friends, and I really care, and I'm really respectful of people's time.
They're humans.
There you go. That is exactly what it is.
Yeah.
That is exactly what it is.
So you do it with care and with consideration.
Yeah.
For both parts.
Yeah.
Both humans.
Yeah.
And it sounded like you were also saying, or you were going to say something about how it's not just about going out and finding, but it's also about allowing things to come to you. Were you going to say it's kind of...
Yeah. I've been very fortunate in the opportunities that come my way. I've been flown to Dubai to be a keynote speaker at a tech conference, and that came through a random conversation. And there are these opportunities for conversation or potential collaboration that come my way that I would never have had the strategy and said, I want to do that. How I even got to Burning Man was I was helping to run a school, and somebody from Chicago came over and she loved what we were doing, and she and I really connected. And then she went back and she introduced me to a woman who lives in Chicago who was doing exactly the same thing as I was for a school in Chicago. And then she connected us, and her name's Maria, and Maria and I spent about 10 months trying to collaborate on an idea. I ended up saying, I'd love to go to Burning Man. And Maria was doing an art project, and then she ended up managing to get me a ticket. And the next thing you know, I had kind of packed up and flown to Chicago to go and hang out with a bunch of artists that I'd never met before. My family and friends thought I was crazy. And we did a road trip across America to Burning Man, documenting our journey. But that would never have really come unless I had started to really talk about, I'm interested in this, I'm interested in exploring what that means and getting there in some way. I've seen it happen, I've seen it work with my coaching clients. As I'm saying, I'd really love to be able to do this. Okay, so who knows that you want to do that? Or are you just keeping it internally? Oh no, well, it's kind of a secret and unless you talk about it, unless you express that that's what you're interested in, how do people know how to help you or to support you or any of those things? And it's the same, it goes both ways. So that, I suppose that's why I'm always interested in what are people interested in, because it may not be now, it may not be in a year's time, but it may be at some point there's a connection that I can make that can help that person or bring them together. But it also goes back to the idea of me now being able to say no. It's not a priority for me. I've got so many beautiful people, generous people in my ecosystem that if I can't do it, I'm pretty sure I can introduce you to somebody who would bring great value and you would connect with to be able to do that.
Beautiful. You mentioned when we first started talking about social freedom, diversity.
Yeah.
How do you feel that an organisation can bring more diversity into the way that they work? I mean, is it just that if they shift the culture and the way that they are, that it opens more doors, or does something have to happen that's more?
I think it's both. I think that there has to be some tangible, proactive things that are done, but also understanding what they mean by diversity, because there's also neurodiversity, which seems to be a bit of a buzzword, but it's an understanding of the fact that people think differently and that they can bring different skill sets as well. I ran a workshop for an organisation about diversity, but what I actually made it about was about inclusion. Diversity is one thing. Actually, one of the comments at the end of the session by one of the participants is that the session made her realise that diversity is just a truth, but inclusion is a behaviour. And in order to be inclusive, you have to change your behaviour and your mindset. That's why I think that the structure, there are many structures and many ways of doing it, but I think that changing the culture of an organisation means that it feels more inclusive for the people who are within it. And it means that people from the outside then will feel that they can bring their full selves and they feel included and they feel a part of that rather than the token person who sits there and the cultural appropriation or the little jokes or the things that are seen as jokes or being put forward as the authority on all things for people of colour because you're the only person of colour in that organisation. You don't represent everybody, but that kind of level of pressure to put on somebody and then say that you're diverse. Are you really? That's why I think that the cultural piece is really important, because you have to, if you want to do it right, you have to create a place where people feel included and they feel empowered to be who they are and not apologetic for their cultural or their different ways of thinking or being. It brings a wealth of experience, going back to what we talked about in terms of empathy, it brings a different level of experience and understanding and ideas with these different cultures or backgrounds that can only benefit a business if they're willing to take that chance. It's all good on paper, but actually you have to put these things into practice, live it, and constantly being updating it. So having an equal opportunities policy that sits in the cupboard that nobody else, people getting their welcome back and then actually does nothing with, but we've got an equal opportunities policy, so we're okay. It's not great. It needs to be, I think it needs to be a living, breathing document that is constantly updated and shifted and takes into consideration the people who are within the organisation, not just what we think it needs to be, because the most recent census says, people of colour are 2% of the organisation, so we need to do something. It's not just, okay, so we're going to advertise in different places where we think that those people that we're trying to attract will see the advertising campaign. That may be true, but it also may be because there is a outward perception of the culture, of how am I going to fit in? How will I be welcomed and how will I be empowered being in that organisation?
So a lot of it comes down to empowerment and the welcoming of ourselves and of others.
Yeah. Yes, going back to what we talked about at the beginning, that there is a personal responsibility for that.
Yeah.
But if you're also running an organisation and you want to future-proof your organisation in this ever increasingly digital world, then you need to think about the culture and the way that you are enabling people to feel included and empowered and consistently doing that. Especially now if you're having, you've got the gig economy and you've got people working remotely. How do you nurture and maintain a culture when you have people in different locations who are not physically in the same space, seeing each other and working and having that interaction that you would normally have in an office space? How do you still create that sense of inclusion?
Yeah.
It's a big question.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to figure that out better for this podcast, which is based on all these values.
Yeah.
And we have a team. Now it's an all-woman team in different countries, also different parts of England. So a lot of it happens on WhatsApp, Google Docs and Trello boards. So a lot of it's kind of business, You send a message and a lot of it is, oh, this is there, or I have a question about this, or I think about this quite often, I haven't found the answer yet. How do I make it more human, more alive?
Because what you describe is, I suppose the way that I see that is, in that process, it becomes quite transactional. It's transactional relationships. There is a need, and so I need this, or you need that, and that's it. But actually, I've got some articles that I can send you that I've been looking into about the gig economy and the platform economy, and I'm actually looking at that as a cultural piece to build a workshop around or something around, because we are in, when you start to think about the future of work and how technology is impacting that, my big central theme, which is where the 4 freedoms fit in, is how can you enhance human potential when technology is changing our understanding of what work is going to be and how that is going to happen.
Yeah.
I'm starting to, again, mind map, but think about what will that look like? Because if you want to future-proof a business or be sustainable, and sustainability is not just about the environment and the planet, it's all of these things now. So I think every business should be sustainable. They should have a sustainability at their core. How do we help create and nurture digital cultures with people in different locations and different time zones? Makes it even more difficult.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And in this case, as we are waiting for our listeners to donate more monthly funds, we're on a very tight budget. So I feel like, doing a team video call once a week, I would love. But then I'm also asking people to show up for that without paying them to show up for it. And so then it's like, and that's a big part with the gigging economy, that people are paid often by the hour and kind of thing. So it's not like you're kind of owned by a company for from Monday morning till Friday evening. So
people are showing up because they want to as well.
Yeah. So then how can you bring everything more to life in a digital platform? And it's...
Well, I suppose and this is just off the top of my head, but what's the collective why? Why are you all doing this? How is it matching each of your individual stories, and how can you have a conversation around that, and not just about the things that need to be done?
Yeah, I mean, we all are moved by the conversations.
Yeah.
And there is a tiny bit of that in team interaction, but actually it would be interesting for there to be much more of that, you know, because if we were in an office and everyone was working, say, on editing this episode, whilst we were making tea, we'd all be chatting about, oh, that bit and this and how do you keep the good parts of the water cooler conversation, not the gossipy bits.
Yeah.
But the invigorating bits, the bits where you feel really connected and inspired.
I mean, at the moment, the way that I have done it before is video calls.
Yeah.
I suppose it goes back to what we talked about in that remembering that everybody's human. How can you bring a bit of an art of conversation? How can you bring some of that to, it's not just, okay, we need to work on this and we need to get that done. It's just having a space, thinking space, maybe a collective thinking space. So you're having a Skype call or whatever, video call, where it's just a brainstorm about what are the interesting things that you've seen or the interesting conversations or things that you've heard, and have that ability for everybody to share their thoughts and their opinions and the things that make them curious. Maybe that's what it is. Think about how you can all bring an element of your curiosity to what you're doing and turn that into a conversation, because that's where you'll learn. You'll gain insights from each other. It could make what you're doing more exciting. But I love what you're doing. I think you've got a great team. Seeing how the podcast series has grown and going to the launch of the book initially and everything, it's brilliant, and I'm honoured to have been asked to be a part of it. And people should donate.
Or just spread the word as well if you can't donate.
Spread the word.
Help us grow.
But share.
Sharing. Sharing in it whatever way you can.
Yeah. Think about ways that they can take some of the lessons or the questions from our conversation or from some of the others, and turn them into something tangible in their own lives. How can you pay it forward? And
then let us know. We can share it with all the other listeners.
Yes.
And it becomes more alive.
Yeah. Creating an ecosystem around the podcast, which I'm sure you already have. More interaction in the sense of it's not just about Facebook likes or, that it's as we were just talking about with your team, bringing that curiosity and that humanness to what you're doing and having those, well, I listened to this one and I thought this and blah, blah, blah. So I was interviewed by Douglas Rushkoff for Team Human, which I love. And one of the listeners creates these top trump cards for each of the guests. And so now you can actually go and collect them, which I think is great. So in a sense, they've gamified the whole thing.
Yeah.
Interesting ways of putting that humanness and that curiosity and that ability to share what really drives you into it, whether it's the team or the listeners or other speakers. Maybe that's a way.
Adah, thank you so much. It's just been so great to talk to you. We could go on for hours.
Oh, I know. Thank you so much. I've loved it.
So many things that you have said have sparked something in me, and so I know that you have as well in everyone listening.
I'm glad.
How can we find out more? So it's AdahParris.com?
Yep, AdahParris.com is the website. You can also find me on Twitter at Adah Paris or Instagram the same at Adah Paris.
Brilliant.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. This has been so much fun.
Thank you for spending your precious time with us. As always, you can find links to everything we mention in this episode, download our book, and discover so much more over on the blog. We don't believe in selling you things you don't need through this podcast, and so it's made possible with you, our community. If you loved this and would like to fund our show with a monthly donation or join our online group to connect with other listeners, please visit www.thefutureisbeautiful.co and click on Community and Support. Please also share with friends, hit subscribe, and leave us a review so we can grow. Those gold stars really help others find us, so these ideas can spread. Here is to us, creating a beautiful future together. The Future is Beautiful is made by an all-female team working voluntarily or on reduced rates until our listener support grows. If you have been moved by anything you heard here, please donate the equivalent of buying us a drink. All donations make a huge difference to us and will allow us to keep doing this and remain advertising free. Until next time, I leave you with this question. How will you create beauty in the world?